Your skeleton is generating electricity right now, not metaphorically, not as a figure of speech. The bones in your legs, your spine, your pelvis, every bone bearing your weight, at this moment, is producing a measurable electric field. It has been doing this since you stood up this morning. It does it with every step you take, and it has been doing it every day of your life. This is not biology. This is crystal physics. Your bones are piezoelectric crystals, and when mechanical stress deforms them, they generate electrical charge. The same phenomenon that powers quartz watches and sonar systems is happening inside your femur right now. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how your skeleton converts mechanical force into electrical signals, why those signals tell your bones where to build and where to dissolve, and what happens when the signal stops. Because we know what happens when it stops. We have the data. It comes from astronauts. This is the Dirac way. In 1957, two researchers in Japan made a discovery that should have changed how every human being thinks about their own skeleton. It didn't. Almost nobody outside orthopedic research has ever heard of it. Eiichi Fukada was a physicist at the Kobayashi Institute of Physical Research in Tokyo. Iwao Yasuda was an orthopedic surgeon at Kyoto Prefectural Medical University. They came from opposite ends of science. One studied crystal physics, the other fixed broken bones. And they asked a question nobody had thought to combine. Does bone behave like a crystal? They cut specimens from the femur of human cadavers and ox. They dried the specimens completely, and then they applied mechanical stress shearing force and measured whether electrical charge appeared. It did. Bone is piezoelectric. When you apply shearing force to collagen fibers, making them slip past each other, the material generates an electrical polarization. The same physics that makes quartz vibrate at a precise frequency when voltage is applied works in reverse inside your skeleton. Mechanical stress produces voltage. But here is the detail that changes everything about this finding. Fukada and Yasuda then boiled the bone specimens in hot water, dried them again, and repeated the experiment. The piezoelectric effect was unchanged. Boiled bone, dead bone, bone with every cell destroyed, it still generated electricity when stressed. This is not a biological process. Your cells are not doing this. Your DNA is not involved. This is a property of the material itself, of the crystal structure of collagen. And that word crystal is precise. Collagen, the most abundant protein in your body, self-assembles into a triple helix. 3 parallel chains wound around each other, held together by hydrogen bonds between amino and carbonyl groups. These triple helices stack into a quasi-hexagonal lattice, a crystalline structure. And this crystal has a specific mathematical property that makes piezoelectricity possible. It is non-centrosymmetric. Its unit cell does not have an inversion center. This is the requirement. Centrosymmetric crystals cannot be piezoelectric. The charge generated by stress in one direction is exactly canceled by charge generated in the opposite direction. But collagen's asymmetry means the cancellation is incomplete. Stress produces net polarization, net charge, net electricity. Your skeleton is built from a crystal that the laws of physics require to generate electricity under load. Now, 5 years after Fukada's discovery, in 1962, two researchers at Columbia University pushed this further, and what they found is the reason your bones are the shape they are. See Andrew L. Bassett and Robert O. Becker published a paper in Science titled Generation of Electric Potentials by Bone in Response to Mechanical Stress. They bent bone specimens and measured the electrical polarity on each side. The result was precise. Areas under compression, the concave side of the bend, developed negative electrical potentials. Areas under tension, the convex side, developed positive potentials. Negative where compressed, positive where stretched. And like Fukada before them, they found the same result in living and dead bone. This is material physics, not cellular biology. But here is where it gets strange, because this polarity has a biological consequence that is almost too elegant to believe. Negative electrical potential, the compression side, stimulates osteoblasts, bone-building cells. They activate in the presence of negative charge and begin depositing new bone matrix. Positive electrical potential, the tension side, stimulates osteoclasts, bone-dissolving cells. They activate in the presence of positive charge and begin resorbing bone. Think about what this means mechanically. When you walk, your tibia bends slightly under load. The side under greatest compression becomes electrically negative. Osteoblasts activate. Bone thickens there. The side under least stress becomes electrically positive. Osteoclasts activate. Bone thins there. Your skeleton is sculpting itself in real time, adding material where stress is greatest, removing material where stress is least, and the signal telling it where to build and where to dissolve is not chemical, not hormonal, not genetic. It is electrical, generated by the crystal structure of collagen under mechanical load. This is Wolff's law. Julius Wolff, a German anatomist working in the 19th century, observed that bone adapts to the loads placed upon it. Increase the loading and bone strengthens. Decrease it and bone weakens. He stated this as a mathematical law. Every change in the form and function of bone is followed by certain definite changes in its internal architecture in accordance with mathematical laws. Wolff saw the pattern in 1892. He could not explain the mechanism. Fukada found the mechanism in 1957. Bassett mapped its polarity in 1962, and the loop closed. Your bones obey Wolff's law, because collagen is a piezoelectric crystal that converts mechanical stress into electrical polarity that directs bone-building and bone-dissolving cells to the exact locations where material needs to be added or removed. The mathematics does not allow any other arrangement. A non-centrosymmetric crystal under stress must generate charge. Charge of opposite polarity on opposite sides of a bend must create a differential signal. Cells that respond to electrical gradients must migrate toward their preferred polarity. Bone must thicken where it is loaded and thin where it is not. Your skeleton is not a scaffold. It is a self-optimizing structure running a continuous electrical feedback loop. And it has been running that loop since the first vertebrate crawled out of the ocean and bore weight against gravity. Now, we know what happens when you walk. Heel strikes the ground. Ground reaction force, roughly 1 to 1.5 times. Your body weight transmits through the calcaneus into the tibia, through the femoral neck into the pelvis. At every junction, bone bends under load. At every bend, the compression side goes negative, the tension side goes positive. Osteoblasts and osteoclasts receive their instructions. But what happens when you stop walking entirely? Not for a day, not for a week. What happens when the mechanical load disappears completely? We have the data. It comes from the International Space Station. In microgravity, astronauts are weightless. Their leg bones, spine, and pelvis, the bones that normally bear weight against gravity, experience no compressive loading, no ground reaction force, no bending stress, no piezoelectric signal, and the result is devastating. Astronauts lose 1 to 2% of their bone mineral density per month. That is 10 to 12 times the rate of osteoporosis on Earth. The proximal femur, the bone that bears the most weight during walking, loses approximately 1.5% of its mass per month. Over a 6-month mission, that is roughly 10% of the bone gone. Despite exercising for 2.5 hours per day, 6 days a week, bone loss cannot be fully prevented. And here is the detail that confirms the mechanism. The loss is specific to weight-bearing bones. The tibia loses density, the femur loses density, the lumbar spine loses density. But the skull, which was never load-bearing, even on Earth, gains density slightly, around 2%. The bones that lost their electrical signal dissolved. The bones that never had an electrical signal were unaffected. Recovery after returning to Earth takes 3 to 4 years, and it may be incomplete. Some astronauts never fully recover the bone density they lost. Your bones do not exist by default. They exist because the piezoelectric signal tells them to. Remove the signal, and the skeleton begins to unmake itself. Not all at once, methodically, specifically. The bones that were receiving the strongest electrical instructions on Earth are the first to dissolve in space. The skeleton is not permanent, it is maintained, and the maintenance signal is electricity generated by collagen crystals under mechanical stress. Now, Here is where this stops being a space medicine problem and becomes something that applies to every person watching this video. When you sit for 8 hours at a desk, on a couch, in a car, the bones in your legs and spine experience dramatically reduced loading. Not zero, like microgravity, but far below the threshold required for balanced bone remodeling. Research has established that bone requires mechanical strain between 100 and 2000 microstrain, repeated approximately 100 times per day, to maintain equilibrium between formation and resorption. That corresponds to roughly 30 minutes of weight-bearing activity. Below that threshold, the electrical signal weakens. Osteoclast activity begins to outpace osteoblast activity. Bone resorption exceeds bone formation. Not catastrophically, not at astronaut rates, but incrementally, over years, over decades. Sedentary populations do not lose bone because of aging alone. They lose bone because the piezoelectric signal that maintains their skeleton has been diminished below the threshold where the feedback loop sustains itself. Your bones are not dissolving because you are old. They are dissolving because you stopped sending them the signal to exist. And there is one more layer to this, one more consequence that closes the circle Fukada opened in 1957. Orthopedic surgeons now use devices called electrical bone stimulators. They are FDA-approved medical devices, both invasive versions with implanted electrodes and non-invasive versions with external electromagnetic coils. They apply electrical fields directly to fracture sites that refuse to heal. Osteogenesis is stimulated at the cathode, the negative electrode, using currents between 5 and 100 microamperes. Bone grows toward the negative charge, exactly as Bassett predicted in 1962. The entire field of electrical osteogenesis, a clinical discipline used in hospitals around the world, exists because of a discovery made by a physicist and an orthopedic surgeon who cut specimens from human femurs, boiled them, dried them, and found that dead bone still generates electricity when you stress it. Doctors are now artificially recreating the signal that your skeleton generates naturally with every step you take. Think about what you now understand. You began this video hearing that your bones make electricity. That sounds like a metaphor. It is not. It is crystal physics. Collagen is a non-centrosymmetric crystal. Mechanical stress on a non-centrosymmetric crystal must generate electrical polarization. The polarity maps onto a biological response. Negative charge builds bone, positive charge dissolves it. This feedback loop is what sculpts your skeleton to match the loads you place on it. Remove the load in space, in a hospital bed, in a chair, and the signal fades and the bone follows. Your skeleton is not a structure, it is a conversation. Between gravity and crystal physics, between mechanical force and electrical charge, between the ground you walk on and the cells that build you. Every step is a signal. Every signal is an instruction. And the crystal has been listening since the day you first stood up